This is easily the most fun season start I've had. In less than a day, this build is farming upwards of Pit 80, speed farming Torment 4, killing all the pinnacle bosses, and it's doing so in marvelous fashion zip-zappity, zooming like there's no tomorrow. And that's without any mythics, masterworks, brain or effort, only a shit ton of beers and some good old fun. It's the azurewrath sorcerer build, and we're here to cover everything you need to get this build up and running. I played it since level 1, but it got truly up and running once I obtained the key uniques. Let's check them out so you can start farming. I'd also like to say that this is easily the speed farming build of the season, and once we're done with it, it's going to look like this. Try to beat that in terms of speed. Before we check out the gear though, the Crimson Market is giving away yet another nasty PC. They do these kind of giveaways each month, and the PCs are just getting crazier and crazier. This time it's the Kintsugi, and you can join the draft for free using my link and this golden ticket. Make sure to check it out. Alright, so the gear. You need 1 unique to start popping off, and overall, you're looking for 4 uniques. I spent everything I had on 2 pieces, and you'll see why here. The first piece I spent a shit ton of gold on is the azurewrath, and it's definitely my best piece of gear. But the most important thing you're looking for here is the lucky hit to deal cold damage, because that's where all of our damage is coming from. Because thing is, there are some cool things going on with this one in particular. For starters, this flat damage trigger is way higher than on any other gear. Compare this to the axial conduit pantaloonies, for example, where we flat out are getting 5 to 10 times the damage. But as you know, all good things come in 3, the second being the fact that you can temper the same damage multiplier on your offhand, and the third being these flat damage bases scales with bonus attack speed, meaning stacking up attack speed is directly multiplied to these values, allowing us to deal substantially more damage than we should be. And it's been like this for a year now. So, that's what we'll focus mainly on first, getting a shit ton of attack speed, that is. Now the key for this to trigger is lucky hit. And that's where we find my second best piece of gear, the Fists of Fate. And why did I spend everything on these 2 pieces? Well, it so happens that these 2 are the most important when it comes to masterworking, meaning you want to do everything to hit the triple masterwork on lucky hit here and on the flat damage on your azurewrath. And if you manage to do that and then find an upgrade, holy shit, I'd rather sit on my own ballsack with full force. And when it comes to the lucky hit, this is where you're always going to find the most of it. Getting a good unique here is going to more than double your damage, as you're doubling your lucky hit chance, and in turn, the amount of azurewrath triggers. Alright, and on to the uniques that are important, not particularly important to be great. First one being the axial conduits. The reason we need this is due to the extra chain lightning hits, which you'll want to masterwork of course, but also the added resources and the aspect. The added mana will help us out with spamming our chain lightning, and the aspect will make sure that we fill the entire map with chain lightnings. This is why the build is so fantastic when it comes to AoE clearing. You're simply attacking everything around you automatically. Now, getting one with GA on the chain lightning should be basically free. Getting one with both chain lightning hits and maximum resource is more expensive, however. Next fantastic unique is Talarash's, of course. A 75% multiplier, along with cooldown reduction and lucky hit? How about fuck yes? Getting this one upgraded is going to be my next priority. And final unique. This is a slight YOLO moment though. And with YOLO, I mean you're gonna fucking die if you suck at the game. Raiment. Using this, you'll substantially increase your damage, pulling in enemies for additional AoE, and increasing your damage. If you're going for a more defensive setup, then I'd skip this one, and when you have the Shroud of False Death, then you use that one. Alright, and then finally, all the regular gear pieces. For Helm, I'm using a defensive option with Snow-Veiled Aspect for the damage reduction, along with getting myself armor and resistance capped. But Mr. Big Penis Man, I can clearly see that you're not armor capped. True, use an incense until you've masterworked your gear. Once obtained, you can use either Air of Perdition for a substantial damage increase, or Shaco to get your cooldown reduction up and make evade teleporting way faster. Here I'm also using the Pock and Cax rune combo. And let me tell you, this is absolutely fantastic. We're going to spend such insane amounts of resources in this build that the Cax rune is up permanently, doubling your damage. Cool, huh? Damn right. Next up, we have the sneakers. The most important part of any sneakers is the attack's reduce evade cooldown. The goal is to keep masterworking cooldown reduction everywhere so that we in the end can keep teleporting constantly, having our attacks reduce the evade cooldown the final 1.5 seconds. This will require some banger gear and masterworks though, but the lower cooldown of evade you can obtain, the better. Other than that, the only thing I'd like to replace here is the poison resistance with intelligence, but that would require way better gear than I currently have as to get myself resistance capped. This is also where we find our most important aspect, the Orange Herald. The goal here is to stack both attack speed and lucky hit chance. And hey, will you look at that, both of those will trigger the Orange Herald aspect like crazy. And that's great because reducing the cooldown of our ultimate is going to substantially increase our damage. Next up, we have our amulet. The Storm Swell aspect is used to substantially increase our damage. Other than that, we want intelligence here. It's insanely important, along with the permafrost passive, as this is indeed a great multiplier. After those two, you basically look for any useful passive that increases your damage, such as Class Cannon or any of these down here. It's rather expensive though, unfortunately. I'm also using the new Heradric power here that increases my attack speed as long as my ultimate is my catalytic skill. Sounds like a bunch of vomit. But simply put, you want to set your catalyst to your unstable currents. We're not going to use this once we're decked out, but until then, this is basically the only way of getting yourself attack speed capped. This gem is in attack speed 1, for those that are interested. And for those that don't know what the hell I'm talking about, there are 2 attack speed caps in the game, both at once 100%. You basically want to go to 100% in both rolling this build for maximum damage. Either way, let's move to the final jewelry piece, our ring. The conceited aspect is used for damage. Other than that, you're looking for crit chance, attack speed, and either max life if you need the defense, or int for big dam. An interesting note here is that I'm tempering lightning damage. Why is that? Well shit, we're going to convert it to cold damage via our infusion later on, and there's a double-dipping mechanic doing this, as well as having more lightning multipliers than cold multipliers in our paragons, making us further benefit from this setup. I'm also using the idol from below jewel here for additional damage and defense, along with Scornful Light for a large damage increase on the other ring. And for final, and probably the most important gear piece of today, the offhand. And why is it the most important? Well, shit, because you absolutely must roll lucky hit. Chance to restore resources here, otherwise you're fucked. You don't need to masterwork it or anything because we'll have loads of resource generation, but you absolutely must get it or else you can't sustain your mana. This is also where you'll find crit chance, which you want to get capped, but it's impossible until you get Starless Skies and Air of Perdition. But any bit of crit chance we can find until then is useful. And of course, the lucky hit to deal cold damage. Getting this one max rolled and hitting the masterwork on it is rough, but a humongous damage increase if you're able to do it. Oh, and also imprint the Shredding Blade aspect for big damage. Well, shit, gear complete. Now, let's quickly cover the skills that we're using and why before we head into the skill tree, as to make it less confusing. Teleport. Why are we using it? To become fast as fuck, boy. It's also going to make us unstoppable, which the evade teleport doesn't, meaning even if we get the evade teleport down crazy low, this is still good to have here. Next, blades. Remember the attack speed caps we talked about? Well, your ice blades increases your attack speed in the second attack speed bucket. The other ones that we can use here are unstable currents and cosmic anomaly together with bloody charm. But guess what? I still haven't fucking found it. Good stuff. Use it if you want. Alright, next skill, ice barrier. This is mad important. It's our main source of defense and barrier. It grants a bunch of mana regeneration, it's used for our storm swell aspect, and we reduce its cooldown when we spend mana. Did I say we spend a buttload of mana in this build? Yeah, good. Unstable currents then? Well, firstly, it grants us attack speed. But it's also used to spawn lightning spears, increasing our crit chance and stuns enemies for crowd control. And this is great, by the way, it keeps you alive when you're farming, stunning everything around you. So don't underestimate this one. But it also spawns familiars that increases our damage as well and stuns enemies. For Flame Wall, it's basically a must-have to avoid stupid-ass one-shot mechanics, and it's also our way of activating Talrashas. And finally, Chain Lightning. The reason we use this skill and not charge bolts, for example, is due to its high lucky hit, loads of attacks, and its interactions with Axial Conduit. Wait a minute. Yeah, I just checked. It's skill tree of fucking clock, and you know it, baby. Starting us off, no basic skills needed. For leveling, however, you'd use Frostbolt with the vulnerable and gaining enlightenment easier, and we all want to get enlightened. Next, go for Chain Lightning along with its crackling energies, as that will increase our mana regen. Next, it's time for Teleport, getting some much-needed damage reduction, along with Flame Shield and Ice Barrier for defense. Here we also have Class Cannon, which is great for killing ourselves, and also an extra chance of resetting our defenses here. Next, it's time for the Conjuration skills, where Ice Blades is our biggest source of attack speed in the second attack speed bucket. We have our trusty Familiar for damage and stuns, along with Lightning Spear for crit chance and stuns. All of these goes into the Primordial Binding as well, greatly enhancing our mana regen. Other than that, a bit of defense and lucky hit chance is always a great option. Next, we get a bit of damage from Inner Flames, along with gathering mana from our crackling energies, Yummers. In the ultimate tree, we find Permafrost, which we want on our amulet preferably, along with additional damage passives all over the place, some cooldown reduction, defense, and our lovely unstable currents, massively increasing our damage. Now next up is something important, so listen up, damn it. I'm using Enlightenment here. As we'll spam both Frost and Lightning skills, our uptime on this thing is insanely high. It grants us attack speed, damage, and mana regen. Everything we may need. However, Vire's Mastery is the greater option once you have your crit chance high, both for damage and perhaps more importantly, the damage reduction. Don't underestimate this, as you'll be quite squishy early on, because, well, you're playing a sorcerer. You can swap between these as you will, but generally I go Enlightenment for damage, as we can spam substantially more Chain Lightnings, its damage bonus, and also the attack speed that I'm using to cap myself before I get my mythics, and then I'll probably use Veers once I have Starless Skies and Perdition. Well, shit, skill tree complete. Let's head straight for the Paragons as well while we're at it. Here, the goal is to stack up as much lightning damage as possible, as to convert it later to cold. Other than that, we want glyphs and the legendary nodes first, and once we have all of those, we can start looking at grabbing all the defensive rare and magic nodes. And starting us off, we're using Flame Feeder. This is due to the multiplicative non-physical damage, both increasing our cold damage and our tooltip additive lightning damage that we convert to cold damage. If that doesn't make sense, just ignore it, grab the glyph, and move on. Next, we want Static Charge for damage and mana, along with the Elementalist glyph for a substantial damage increase. Heading over to the Enchantment Master, this node is now one of the best ones out there. It grants us not only damage, but also boosts our Teleport enchant and Ice Blades enchant. Lovely. Here, we also find Tactician, which is just a magnificent glyph for boosting our damage. Next, we get Frigid Finesse for the absolutely disgusting 60% multiplier. Not sure if I've said this before, but the Sorcerer Paragon nodes are just nasty. Not nastier than you, though, you feet-licking pervert. But definitely nastier than this glyph, even though it's great. Unleash, damage, boost the nearby non-physical damage, and mana regen. Yummers. And finally, Ceaseless Conduit. A large damage multipliers, some good nodes, and a great spot to put our control glyph. Yeah, why not? I'm not complaining. Here I'm grabbing control for the massive damage multiplier against crowd-controlled enemies. While speed farming, this one should be up permanently, as everything dies quickly. But for pit pushing, you may want to swap this one out. Up to you, hombre. God damn it, man. You still here? I'm impressed. Drop a sub while you're at it, and let's quickly showcase the powers and mercenaries before teaching you how to play this magnificent build. When it comes to the powers, honestly, you can play whatever you want as long as it benefits the build. I'm using Disintegrate, triggering it via my ultimate, so I get my attack speed cap sorted, but this also means that I'm not having 100% uptime on Disintegrate. Another option is using Cosmic Anomaly and Bloody Charm for attack speed. I may use that in the future. I then have Fractured Core to remove resistance auras, Invigorating Helix to gain Fortify, which equals damage reduction, and Bloody Charm for an execute. When it comes to our mercenaries, you know where it's at. Subo is the fucking man. The wall hack he provides us with is absolutely perfect when we want to speed farm, and he also grants us 25% crit damage. Yeah, not complaining. For reinforcement, either go with Rehair for defense or Variana for helping you out with some attack speed early on. And with that, we're done with this shit. Time to get hecking good, friends. Playing this build is insanely easy and rewarding. You have 4 buttons that are simply there to get mashed as hard as possible. Ice Blades, Ice Barrier, Unstable Currents, and Chain Lightning. You press these as often as possible. When it comes to Teleport and Flame Shield, however, it varies. Teleport is your main source of mobility, and when you attack, you reset your evade cooldown, and in turn, your teleport cooldown. Therefore, attack as much as possible and teleport for mobility, both via the button itself and by evading. And if you use the Raiment Chest, then you also have these for gathering up enemies and gaining damage. Finally, Flame Shield. When clearing, you simply use this when it's off cooldown as to trigger the Tal Rasha bonus. When doing bosses, however, you definitely want to save this for when there are annoying ass mechanics you need to avoid. Having this, along with teleporting around for mobility and dodging all mechanics, should keep you alive. Remember though, I built this version mainly for damage and speed, rather than pushing. If you find yourself overwhelmed, too lazy to dodge and dying, then simply grab some additional defense. I've shown you where. Now get out of here, bitches.